Caitlin Clark's absence raises new questions around one of WNBA's all-time scorers. When Caitlin Clark went down with a quad injury, Indiana didn't just lose its rookie sensation, they lost their floor general, pace setter, and go-to scorer. The Fever have gone 2-3 in her absence, but the wins haven't come easy, and the losses have exposed something deeper. One of the WNBA's most storied scorers, DeWanna Bonner, is suddenly a riddle Indiana hasn't solved. And that's the strange part. We're talking about the league's third all-time leading scorer. Someone who, as Chantel Jennings put it in the latest episode of her podcast, came into this season as the league's fourth all-time leading scorer. DeWanna knows how to get a bucket. Yet 8 games in, her role feels blurry. In theory, Clark's absence should have opened the floodgates for Bonner. But instead, we've seen a few flickers: 21 points against Washington, 13 against Connecticut, followed by games where she took just 4 or 6 shots. Ben Pickman nailed it. We're used to seeing DeWanna put up 15, 17 points a game. Is that something we're going to see this season from her at Indiana? But like her role, they're still very much trying to figure out her role as a scorer as a secondary playmaker. She's taken just 6 shots per game this year. That is significantly, by a large margin, her career low. Statistically, this is Bonner's quietest offensive season yet, averaging just 2.1 to 6.4 field goal attempts and 7.4 points per game. Compare that to her prime years in Phoenix or even Connecticut last season, where she was averaging 5 to 12 shots per game, and it feels like watching a flamethrower set to simmer. There's more to it than just shot attempts. She's gone from starting to coming off the bench, from focal point to flexible piece. Indiana's still figuring out the puzzle, and Bonner's trying to find her corner. Because when Bonner fades into the background, the scoring load shifts elsewhere, and lately that elsewhere has been Kelsey Mitchell. A talented shooter, sure, but one who's clearly been pressing. Against the Dream, Mitchell went 5 of 16 from the field, a cold 31%. And that wasn't an outlier. In the other 2 losses without Clark, she shot 4 of 16, 25%, and 4 of 15, 26.7%, respectively. The numbers don't lie. The burden's heavy, and Mitchell's shooting reflects that strain. Caitlin Clark's return nears amid Fever's offensive woes. Because while the Fever try to keep it together without Caitlin Clark, the void is starting to hum with pressure. Coach Stephanie White confirmed ahead of Tuesday's game in Atlanta that Clark would once again sit out, missing her 5th straight game with that nagging quad strain. And yes, she's close, but close isn't quite court-ready. We're going to be smart, and we're going to be cautious, and we're going to play the long game, White told reporters, and work her back in very intentionally. Clark herself had circled Tuesday for a potential return, but stressed she wouldn't rush it. With a marquee match against the Liberty coming Saturday, there's still runway to get her back into rhythm. In her first 4 games, Clark averaged 19 points, 9.3 assists, and 6 rebounds, a triple-threat engine who powered the Fever's flow. Since then, it's been patchwork progress. Indiana went 2-2 in the 4 games leading up to Tuesday, and sure, back-to-back wins over the Mystics and Sky helped the vibes. But that spark? It's flickering. Especially after they lost Tuesday's game to the Dream 77-58. And that brings us right back to the noise, the kind that comes from someone not shooting. DeWanna Bonner's too quiet. Mitchell's trying to do too much. And with Clark sidelined, Indiana's looking for answers in all the wrong places. Indiana Fever fans pinpoint main culprit after suffering worst loss of the season. Aari McDonald might, as well, have been one of the best signings of the Indiana Fever this season. She settled right in on the first day. We couldn't be more proud of her and how she's transitioned, and how she's taken us to another level, Austin Kelly echoed after the Fever managed back-to-back wins. But fast forward just 1 game, and even Aari's spark wasn't enough to cover up the Fever's lingering issues. They suffered their worst loss of the season against the Atlanta Dream. Still, despite missing out on the Commissioner's Cup, fans aren't turning on the team. This time, they've got someone else on their radar. It all began when the Indiana Fever entered Gateway Center to face off against the number 3 ranked Atlanta Dream, who came in with a strong 6-3 record. On paper, anyone could have bet on the Dream given their impressive run in the first month of the regular season. But the first half was far from it. For those who missed it, the Fever entered the third quarter tied 33-33, thanks largely to McDonald's explosive first-half performance. Coming off the bench, she tallied 9 points in just 8 minutes, igniting the team's early momentum. But everything unraveled in the second half. The Fever shot just 4 of 14 in the third quarter and a dismal 4 of 9 in the fourth, eventually falling 58-77. Offensively, they struggled mightily, shooting only 36.2% from the field and a painful 20.8% from beyond the arc. Despite attempting 24 three-pointers, they converted just 5, often settling for low-quality perimeter looks. The Dream, by contrast, looked calm and calculated, shooting an efficient 47% from the floor. They dominated the paint with 46 points inside compared to Indiana's 28. And if that wasn't enough, Atlanta also controlled the glass, hauling in 44 total rebounds, including 10 offensive boards, while Indiana managed just 27. So, what did this all mean? The Fever dropped to 1-2 in Commissioner's Cup play. And while fans expected better, especially from a team averaging 81.6 points per game on 45.2% shooting across their first 9 outings, this performance was a sharp deviation. But if you think fans are now throwing in the towel, you might be predicting wrong. Fans' frustration mounts as Stephanie White's decisions spark obvious backlash. As the Fever's ranking dipped to number 7 with a 4-5 record, spectators couldn't hold back. But surprisingly, it wasn't the team under scrutiny this time. Instead, head coach Stephanie White found herself at the center of the backlash. I need someone to genuinely ask Stephanie White if this is good hoops. Like, is she proud of the content being displayed out there? Bruh, this is horrific. We've never had this bad offensively, wrote one user. And there's some truth to that. Indiana shot just 4 of 25 in a game, where the team already ranks only 6th in points per game. What truly frustrated fans, though, was White's refusal to adjust the game plan, even as key players like Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston visibly struggled. The young forward finished with just 7 points, while Mitchell was limited to 11. Now the fans questioned the Fever's decision to hire Stephanie White. Did the Indiana Fever hire the wrong coach? Another user asked. It all stems from high preseason expectations. The Fever made championship contenders conversations under White. But as the season progresses, it's clear the team is faltering. None of White's strategic plays seem to be working, whether involving DeWanna Bonner, Michaela Timpson, or Natasha Howard. So while under Christie's sides, the team struggled defensively with White, fans now argue they're falling apart on both ends of the floor. Indiana Fever doesn't have good pieces, and honestly Stephanie White is not that great. Another fan added. Coach Stephanie White details Dream's physicality as reason for loss.
It seemed like the third quarter was kind of the difference, just what went wrong in that quarter.
Yeah, I think they hit us in the mouth. I felt like they did that a little bit in the first quarter too, and we were able to regroup. Their physicality on the defensive end really affected us. It took us out of what we wanted to do and forced us to rush offensively, and they've got really good shifty guards that can get downhill, and we didn't do a good job of guarding our yard or being in rotation, and they've got great post players. They got Olympians on this roster, right? And our ability to match that physicality on the defensive end, our positioning, our connectedness, I thought wasn't there, and they took advantage of it.
And what was the difference between the physicality, you think, like in the first half versus that third quarter and fourth?
I don't know if it was different. I just felt like we handled it better early in the ballgame.
I know fouls are kind of the story of the season, and it's not always fun to talk about the fines, but 6 through 3 quarters just seems incredibly low. Did you feel like you weren't getting a lot of calls early that impacted late in the game?
Yeah, I feel like it's been that way all season for us. But again, I think that an area for growth for us is we've got to be able to play through that. Obviously, it's being able to happen. So we've got to find a way to play through that. We've got to use physicality in a way that we can, use our movements and some of our pressure releases against them. We've got to find a way to finish with contact. I felt like the other thing that it forced us to do today was get very tunnel vision. We got away from moving the ball. We got a lot of ISO threes instead of a lot of kick out threes, and so it forced us to be a little bit more tentative and tunnel vision.
How do you take that into practice in the coming days in terms of building off of all that?
Yeah, we just got to get, we got to get the guys that we practice against to continue to beat the shit out of us, right? To be physical and to make things difficult for us, and we've got to be able to handle that. I think growth in terms of mental toughness, right? In terms of being able to stay focused and locked in, being able to get to the next action. Being able to utilize pressure releases and not force it to freeze us are all things that we can continue to work on in practice.
Atlanta had a 44 to 27, I think, rebounding advantage.
Yeah.
Is that something to do with physicality as well?
I mean, I don't know. They got big bodies in there with Breezy and BG, and oftentimes that was a result of us being in rotation because we got beat on a straight line drive, and so when we're in rotation off of straight line drives, a lot of them are roaming free, and it's tough for our bigs to come in there when they're guarding their bigs and rebound. Our guards have to do a little bit better job. I don't know what our guard rebounding was, but we've got to be able to have our guards average 3 or 4 rebounds each. Now they're a tough matchup for us, and they had their way with us tonight.
Alicia Gray had a great game.
Yeah.
One of the Olympians you were talking about.
Yeah.
She's had a great season too. What has made her so good, do you think, this year?
She's one of my favorite players in this league. I just think that she's incredibly talented. She's gotten better every year. She continues to just allow the game to come to her. She's aggressive to the rim. Her three-point shooting is really good. Great scorers get to the free throw line. She does that. She uses her size well. She plays off of her teammates really well. She's a tough matchup.